Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and just like I did on Friday, I'm going to start with a little bit of cooking, although it's not a recipe day. I'm going to talk about ambition mostly, but this is a version of the dish I was making Friday, which was pork in a pork broth with Cambodian spices, which I'm doing again. I've got a little small treat over here, which is, get it in focus, is turmeric, fresh turmeric, and then fresh ginger, as well as galangal, lemongrass, Cambodian greens, Asian mushrooms. And the difference today is that I've added coconut milk. And so it makes it into what is called amok in Cambodia, which is really just a generic term for one pot with coconut. So on to ambition. So here's my modest ambition, the finished chicken amok, served with rice as is customary here. And just a brief explanation in addition to what I said at the beginning. Amok is really a generic term that could be similar to something like curry. There are many curries in India and in Southeast Asia. And you have to be more specific, and you also have to with amok. Amok is normally made with river fish in Phnom Penh, but chicken and pork and beef are also possible. And I had some chicken in the freezer. So that's what I did, and all done now, and we can talk about ambition in a slightly different context. I'm not talking about general ambitions, like to have an ambition to go on holiday to Mallorca, or the ambition to build an extension on your house or something like that. I mean, those are just plans. What I want to talk about is what I would more likely designate as toxic ambition. And it fits within the context of what I was talking about last time when I was talking about corporate structures, particularly as they exist in Japan and South Korea. And you see those corporate structures for what they are, very rigid, well-defined social systems. You climb the ladder by saluting up, and you can more or less do what you want to the people below you, and you just climb that corporate ladder. And I don't need to particularly single out Japan and South Korea as special examples, because those corporate structures exist everywhere. And today I'm in fact going to talk more about the United States. They exist in the military everywhere. Wherever your position in the military, if you are a sergeant or a private or a general or a captain in the army, determines your fate. That you can receive orders from above and give orders below, And if you defy those orders, there's a lot of problems. Now, sometimes, in the case of the United States Army, you cannot obey a law, an order that is illegal, in theory. That is, if your company commander orders you to go and massacre a bunch of innocent civilians in a village, as happened in the Vietnam War, you are supposed, as a subordinate to the company commander, to say, I won't do that because it's illegal. But you run the risk of being court-martialed, or even being shot by your company commander. I mean, there's all kinds of things. The corporate structure takes over. And likewise, if you have a complaint about your company commander, there's very little you can do, because he's your commander. So you have to go above him or her, and that's also very difficult. So this structure, which also exists in corporations like IBM or Google or Amazon, exists in universities, exists in the church. It's everywhere. The hierarchical corporate structures are the model for most contemporary cultures, and most people work within them. Now, what I'm calling toxic ambition, and I'm calling it toxic ambition partly because I hate it, is the desire on the part of individuals within those structures to rise in the ranks regardless of their merit or regardless of what they have to do. Like, some people will bribe their way to the top, or they will do the bidding of the people above them who can put them in better positions, even at their own personal cost. And they won't be worried about what they have to do. They'll only be concerned with what the consequence is, that is, they get promoted. And I don't have a lot of experience in the corporate sector, but I do have a great deal of experience in the Presbyterian Church in the United States and in the university system. And those are both areas where you would have thought on the surface that toxic ambition would not be prevalent. Well, it is. It's prevalent everywhere. It's particularly annoying, aggravating, irritating in the church, because the church is also supposed to be about loving and sharing and kindness and so forth. And there is the most amazing toxic ambition within the church. And you should know that. I mean, you should know that if you know anything about Episcopalian Church of England or the Catholic Church. I mean, how do people get to be archbishops and cardinals? Because they're just like nice guys? I mean, it's very interesting that the current Pope, although I'm not absolutely sold on him, isn't your typical toxic, ambitious churchman. Very, very strange, because most of the cardinals are. Where does that toxic ambition come from? And what problems does it create? Now, we're still, as I'm recording, which is actually Saturday, we're not sure yet the outcome of the presidential election in the United States and some of the Senate races. Maybe by Tuesday when I post this, it'll be clearer, but I have a feeling there's going to be some judicial challenges and that Trump's not going to concede. But we'll see. But I can ask in the context of that election, who has the ambition ever to be the President of the United States. I can't, because I wasn't born in the United States. I could be Prime Minister of England. I could be President of Argentina. I haven't the remotest ambition in that direction. And I think that the people who do have a variety of motives, but I think one of the strongest motives is a lust for power and control. Not all, there are some politicians who are actually concerned about the people they represent, but a great number are interested in the power and the money that they can control. And that's equally true in the corporate world, it's equally true in the military world, and it's equally true in the academic and the church world. That a lot of people just, they want more money, but I suppose that's fair enough. They want more power. Now, I never wanted to be the chairman of my department, but I ended up being the chairman for 18 years. But by, I guess, fortunate or unfortunate circumstances, that I ended up being the most senior member of the department, because a lot of the older people that were senior even when I was hired all moved to other places, and so eventually I was the senior out of a lot of very junior, untenured people in the department that I had hired, and I had to be chair because there was nobody else of my seniority. And I hated it. I didn't want to do it at all, but there was no one else to do it. And I was, on a couple of occasions, considered for being the dean of my division. And I was not seriously interested in the position, but I was put forward by the previous dean as the best candidate, and I didn't get the job. And the reason I didn't get the job was because somebody else in the department, who was junior to me, put in an extraordinary effort with the higher administration to get the job instead of me. And I mean, I give great thanks to God that I didn't get that job, because it would have been awful. But it was toxic ambition at work. The person who actually got the job in place of me was useless, but had the ambition to have that powerful position, have the power over other people. And that was the main desire for the job, and the money. And my ambitions, plural, in life have always been to do what makes me happy. And climbing corporate ladders does not make me happy. And having power over other people doesn't make me very happy either. I did wish for a great deal of my career that I'd had more money, because the decisions that I made to just do what I was going to do because I liked doing it was not fashionable, was not profitable. And so there are a lot of things that were disadvantageous. But I did all the research that I wanted to do because it appealed to me. I enjoyed researching dances in different parts of the world, music in different parts of the world, religious systems in different parts of the world, and I wrote about them. And they were not popular. That if you're going to climb the corporate structure in the academic world, when you're doing your PhD, you have to put your finger up in the wind and say, what's popular right now? And say, okay, I'm going to do that for my dissertation, and I'm going to follow the wishes of my dissertation advisor, and follow along in that trajectory, and then I will get a job and I will continue to pursue topics that are popular. I was interested in aesthetics, I was interested in church aesthetics, in dance and music, which was not at all popular at the time. In fact, I mean, in the late 70s, there were absolutely no jobs advertised for somebody who had a specialty in aesthetics and anthropology. None, zero. I managed to get the one job that I applied for because it was at a campus of the SUNY system that specialized in the arts, and they were looking for somebody who could do both social science and the arts, and so that was fortuitous. But from then on, I pursued aesthetics, and it finally got to be more popular within anthropology by the time I retired. But I pursued it because it made me happy. I could have taken a completely different trajectory. I could have started off when I was doing my PhD saying, okay, what is going to get me a job? And at the time there were several possibilities. One would have been economics and modernization, and my doctoral advisor was heavily into modernization. His own doctoral thesis had been on modernization in Java. I could have followed his path, would have been fine, and then I probably would have had multiple job offers, but it didn't interest me. It actually interests me a little bit more now, finally, but at the time it didn't interest me at all. So I would say that toxic ambition, from the point of view of the person who has that kind of toxic ambition, is I don't know whether I want to say a psychological disorder, but it certainly stems from certain kinds of personal selfish desires. Now, the disadvantage of this kind of toxic ambition, particularly as pursued, as I was talking about last time in the context of the Japanese and the South Korean corporations, is that promotion within the system is all based on corruption. How much money you pay up the system, or how much you favor certain approaches of people above you, and so on. That just generically, let's say that it's based on corruption. And what's likely to happen is that people are going to mount the ladder without the necessary qualifications, and that you're going to have more and more incompetence as you climb the corporate ladder, which empirically seems to be the case, and which I also saw in many institutions, both church institutions and academic institutions. So what's the cure? My simple answer to that question as an anthropologist is that there is no cure. And the reason there is no cure is because the corporate culture sustains itself. It's what we sometimes use the Latin term sui generis for. That is, that the corporate culture creates itself and it replicates itself, so that as new people come into the system, they learn the system and they get promoted up through the system through corruption, and they continue to validate the corruption. It just keeps sustaining itself. It's a self-sustaining, dysfunctional system. Not all systems that are in place in society are there for the good of society. In fact, most of them are not. But the political system, which to me is the biggest travesty worldwide, The political system throughout Europe and the United States and South America is hopelessly corrupt and will not change. It won't change because people want it to change. That is, the people who are being affected by the corruption, it's not going to change because the people at the top got there through corruption. And when they see other people rising through corruption, they recognize the system. The system itself recognizes that that's how it works. And it's stable, it's dysfunctional, but stable. And that, I would say, is equally true of academia and of the church. And one of the reasons I don't particularly like the organized church anymore is that it follows that corrupt corporate system, so that all the leaders, the pastors, the priests, the ministers, whatever, are part of that system. I was part of that system. I mean, I didn't follow all the rules because I was essentially a part-timer at small, poor churches, and so that's kind of insignificant. And the same is true of academia. I did what I wanted to do, but I never got beyond a certain stage because I didn't climb the ladder the way that you're supposed to in the corporate system. And I will attempt to answer the question again that I asked at the end of the last video, which is, how do these systems ever change? And my answer to that also is, I don't know. As I said last time, I would be rich and famous if I knew how to promote social change or corporate change. I don't know. I don't see any kind of social mechanisms or social variables that can be tweaked or altered that will cause social change. It seems to happen for, dare I say, random reasons. Don't know. Anyway, this is an area I want to pursue more at some point, but I'm going to go and continue with my chicken amok. And meanwhile, please like and subscribe, and I hope your week goes really well.